Thanks very much for coming out on this blustery night, and it's very nice to see some of my Ottawa friends that I don't get to see too often. I'm really delighted to be here. This is a great festival Fred started and is now in its fourth year. It's become a tradition. It's my second or third time, and I'm very impressed always with the, I'm depressed but also impressed, and it's good. It's good to be depressed in an uplifting way, and that is what we always are here. The format for tonight is part reading and part interview, and I actually think the interview might be more fun for you, but I'm told that the reading is de rigueur if someone has a book and you're supposed to read from it. But since I know that the questions in the interview with Fred are going to elicit a lot of the material that's already in the memoir part of the book. The book is, it's a collection of mostly talks that I have given, but that were never published in writing. So I gathered those together, and then I wrote two original essays, the opening cultural memoir, which is 40 pages long, and then I thought, well, I really should have something at the, a bookend that's equally original and weighty, and what was I going to write about but pit bulls, of course, because nobody's interested in that, but I just needed to do it. It's a subject that I took up in the last couple of years, and it's actually, I know pit bulls, a strange topic for a columnist to be writing about, but I feel that the whole pit bull movement, and it is a movement, believe it or not, is a reflection of many of the cultural trends of our time, and is a lot more important. It's not only about dogs. So I said, you know what, this is my book, I'll write what I want to. So I have a 40-page essay at the back of the book on pit bulls, and only the very intrepid go into it. But I promise, if you did, you would actually come away with a deeper understanding of our culture and the problems in our culture. Anyways, what I decided to do, I'm not going to do a long reading. I'm going to read the final few pages from my cultural memoir. I start my memoir by saying that I grew up with every advantage a person can have under the sun. This is not a hard luck story. This is a story of someone who was given every single advantage in life. I was born into a stable family with loving parents, sisters, good fortune. My father made a comfortable living. I went to wonderful schools. So I had a very good life, and I have never experienced any of the difficulties that any of the injustices that I write about. I personally have never experienced. So, and I do find that in most of like the Father's Rights movement and that sort of thing, you do find that it's the people that have experienced the injustices that usually take up activism in those causes. But I will explain why in my reading that is not the case for me. But I do feel that I have been so fortunate in my life that it is important to give back in some way, and this was the way that I chose very late in life, because I only started being a journalist at the age of 60, which is unusual, I think. And I was other things, I was a teacher and I did other things. I never thought I could be a journalist. It was not something I thought you had to have very special credentials to do or go to journalism school or whatever. And then I found out that all you really need is passion, curiosity, and a thick skin, which can be learned on the job if you don't have it already. But you do need to have that, and I think anybody who writes as a journalist in comment and who is writing against the prevailing winds, as I often do, feels the same way. So I'm going to read, and a good part of my cultural memoir is about Quebec, because I was born in Ontario and Toronto. I grew up in Toronto. I've lived most of my life in Quebec. The last 50 years have been in Quebec. So a lot of it is about what I've seen in Quebec, adapting to Quebec, how Quebec influenced me. And so that's how I end my memoir, and that's where I'm going to begin my reading. And it won't be too long a reading so that we can get into the fun interview. As I write in November 2012, shortly after the election of a PQ minority government, one feels the same vibe in the air as we did before the 1995 referendum, when these organized, radical, xenophobic clusters were active. Fear of the English language, insecurity, blame laying on others, all these socially deleterious elements are in play once again. When René Lebec's first PQ government passed Bill 101, which made French the common language in Quebec, its preamble said that the law would be, quote, respectful of the institutions of the English-speaking community of Quebec. But today, as I write, we have a PQ government pushing for French as the language of use in our private lives and toying with restrictions on political candidacies that would virtually eliminate all but maternal language francophones from public life. I don't believe Pauline Marois harbors any particular dislike for the English, but she is enthralled to a core xenophobic element in her party. Of course, I wrote this before the Charter of Values, and I would have had something to say about that too. There is an ugly imp sitting on this premier's shoulder. If she does not heed its tribalistic urgings, she will feel the pain of its sharp talons. I seem to have come full circle in my half-century sojourn here. I arrived to tension, the tension subsided, the tension escalated, subsided again for what we assumed was for good. But here we go again. And to my mind, because it is emanating from older sovereigntist veterans acting out of desperation with nothing to lose and a willingness to incite general hostility, this overt expression of hatred for the English language is more worrisome than ever. Sometimes I feel guilty that we did not leave Quebec when our children were young. My son left Quebec because he could not see a career future here, but my daughter and her family stayed. They have good quality of life, but will my grandchildren? I do worry about that. It was in the post-referendum years, when feelings of rancor continued to run high on both sides of the sovereignty debate, that I became a journalist of sorts. I began writing polemical pieces for publication in Cité Libre, the political journey Trudeau had been active in founding in the turbulent 1960s. Long dormant, it had been revived as a journalistic champion of federalism under the spirited editorship of passionately federalist academics Max and Monique Nemney. Trudeau's dual vision of official pan-Canadian bilingualism with strongly protected individual rights fueled this enterprise. Whatever other reservations I had about Trudeau, and there are plenty, his position on Quebec sovereignty was an inspiration I was happy to pay homage to. It was invigorating, no, cathartic, to have such an outlet for my righteous anger. I felt young. My intellectual sap was running in a way I hadn't felt since university days. That was the late 1990s. Then, by coincidence, my son Jonathan shocked us by announcing that he was joining the editorial board of Conrad Black's just-founded National Post. At the time, he was a tax lawyer in New York. We knew that he loved to write and had been proud to see his occasional pieces in print, but never dreamed he would segue from what seemed his settled career in law — he was actually working for a Canadian firm in their New York office — into journalism. Almost from the first day that John began working at the Post, I started pestering him about topics I thought the Post editorial board should be addressing. I was now fully engaged intellectually on a number of political and cultural issues: political correctness in the universities, feminism, multiculturalism, and so forth, and delighted to have this filial conduit for my frustrations. Not that John followed my advice, unless it jibed with what he and the other editorialists were thinking, of course, but still. One day, John said in response to yet another polemical nudge, "If you feel so strongly about these issues, why don't you write something yourself? I can't guarantee it will get published, but if it is half decent, I will at least pass it along to the comment editor." The rest, as they say, is my history. I wrote an op-ed about Quebec. To my amazement, it was published. It was a thrilling moment. I continued to send unsolicited op-eds in for the next 3 years. An encouraging proportion of them were published. Finally, in June of 2003, the comment editor, in those days it was Natasha Hassan, who later decamped to the Globe and Mail, told me she liked my voice. And she asked, did I think I could write something on a weekly basis? If ever there was a flood tide risk in life that would never be offered again and was begging to be acknowledged and seized upon, this was it. My heart knocking, for I certainly did not then believe I could turn out a weekly piece, My mind's eye glanced at the silver platter heaped with the blessings that had filled me with confidence in my youth. Then I calmly responded that, why yes, of course, I was quite sure I could turn out a weekly piece. So Natasha took a chance on me, and to my astonishment and delight, it turned out that I could. I love what I do. It feels natural to me, and my pleasure in writing has not withered with time and the familiarity of my 50 columns a year plus blogging writing routine. I opened by saying, and I did open in my piece that I didn't read, by saying that I did not come to journalism by way of family tradition, but opinions. I don't remember a time when I did not feel compelled, daily as it seems to me, to impose, challenge, or defend an opinion in my family circle and beyond. Argument was the staff of family life. We argued about matters great and small, with each other and with our parents, with our teachers, and even in my later teen years, as I recall with a little embarrassment, with our rabbi, who took my callow cheekiness in good stride. We had no respect for each other's feelings if we thought we had the better end of the argumentative stick. Many arguments ended in tears, and I suppose we were reprimanded for extremism once in a while. But on the whole, our parents looked benignly upon our clumsy verbal jousts, as a traditional Inuit father might smile at his son's wobbly struggles with a harpoon. With no other weapons at hand for most of our history, our Jewish history, making a case to kings, politicians, fellow students, the media, has evolved as a Jewish survival skill. For me, writing is not work, but it isn't quite play either, or not play as it is perceived by non-Jews. Jews are not a spontaneously light-hearted people. We may appear light-hearted, but we work very hard at that. Until the last 100 years, the whole idea of playfulness, exercising one's body or mind for pleasure, fun, or mere aesthetic gratification, was looked down on by Jews as the mark of people who were neither serious nor moral. Spontaneous play, organized sport, these are Hellenist inventions, eagerly snapped up by Christians that completely bypassed Jews, and Jews bypassed it.